As the population continues to grow, we risk not being able to feed everyone. The problem comes as we need to produce more and more food to keep up with demand. But due to changes in the environment away from the optimum growing conditions and the prevalence of adverse weather events such as droughts and flooding, this may result in our supply of food not meeting the demand for the food. Today we'll be answering the question, will climate change cause rationing to come back? Exploring how climate change may reduce the Earth's carrying capacity, whether droughts and flooding will impact our food supply, and what solutions there are to the food crisis. We are Ecolor Ltd. Please give us a like, subscribe, and share this article. Your support means a great deal to us. Thank you. Every population, whether it's a pack of wolves or the human race, has a carrying capacity. This is the absolute maximum number of individuals that the population can support. It is set by many different factors, such as the supply and demand for food and water, as well as the availability of space for the individuals to inhabit. As I alluded to earlier, as the environment changes due to climate change, we may struggle to continue to grow certain crops as the certain conditions are no longer favourable. I know you'll be thinking, well, that doesn't mean that we can't grow anything. And well, you'll be right. But for every 1 degree Celsius above pre-industrial levels, there is thought to be a 10% reduction in the crop yield, as stated by Wallace-wells. This is quite scary when we remember that the current climate goals will just about hold global temperatures at 1.5 degrees Celsius, and this will still require roughly 15% more agriculture just to keep up with the yields that we will lose to climate change. Of course, some countries will be especially hard hit by the changing environment, not least due to droughts, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But using the United States as an example, they are one of the world's largest exporter of corn. So this is the crop that has been estimated to have a reduced yield of 50%. That's a huge amount if global temperatures increase by 4 degrees above pre-industrial levels. So not only this, but the UN says that the planet needs twice as much food to support itself by 2050. Even though this is just a prediction, I think it's a quite good one. So it likely takes into account the loss of yield due to climate change. But the fact of the matter is that this will be no easy task to produce twice as much food. In fact, this figure may be way higher in reality if temperatures are not contained to 1.5 degrees Celsius, as shown by the reduced crop yields that I've mentioned before. So actually, keeping up with the demand for food whilst keeping carbon emissions low will be a major challenge, especially when you consider that currently global food production is responsible for a third of carbon emissions. This just demonstrates how difficult a situation we're finding ourselves in, and how this problem, if left unchecked, could create a perpetual cycle of carbon emissions, a runaway train scenario, if you will. So bearing this in mind, you likely won't be surprised that the warming of the planet will result in more and more droughts. So this is where you have prolonged periods of little to no precipitation. These droughts can have lasting impacts, allowing deserts to spread in a process called desertification, where generally biodiversity and the amount of life found in these environments decreases massively. Despite this, we still have the ability to prevent these droughts from engulfing the entire planet. But at a 2 degrees rise, areas such as India and the Mediterranean may become covered with these droughts. Of course, the problem worsens as temperatures increase above this level. At 2.5 degrees Celsius, Wallace-wells says that the world may enter a food deficit, demonstrating that climate change will reduce our carrying capacity as a species, as our food supply will become limited. My previous article talked about how climate change may cause the next pandemic. In this, I mentioned the spread of habitable regions for mosquitoes to spread diseases. But mosquitoes aren't the only insect that likes hot weather. Unfortunately, insects such as locusts don't get on very well with farmers. Of course, these pests may have other effects as well as just the destruction of these crops, but more pests is likely going to force farmers to use more pesticides, which can, in turn, have carcinogenic, so this means cancerous causing properties, but some insecticides naturally toxic to bees, causing a cascade of problems for our pollinating friends. So these are big problems, and that's probably an understatement, but big problems need big solutions. And thankfully, we do have some good ideas in the works. For example, the British government has invested in many soil-free startup companies, according to Wallace-wells. These soil-free farms are a great idea, and I'm sure you will have heard of their other names, so hydroponics. The reason these hydroponics are so great is that we have almost all control over everything the crop needs, so everything can be kept at the optimal conditions. For example, we can control the number of nutrients in the water, so it doesn't become depleted like a traditional farm. But the big upside to hydroponics is that crops are grown inside with artificial light, and because these crops are grown inside, we don't need many pesticides. Plus, we can control the ambient temperature with heating and air conditioning. Being able to control the temperature to meet the ideal growing conditions for these crops is an absolute game changer when it comes to climate change. Because even if the Earth warms to 4 degrees Celsius, these thermoregulated indoor farms will be working at optimum conditions. So crops like corn, which would be badly affected in America, could remain close to the full yield possible. On the subject of keeping our crops growing at an optimal condition, they are much more efficient than traditional farms. So not only do they produce 30% higher yield in the same amount of space, but they are said to use 90 to 95% less water than a traditional farm. Based on this, I'm sure you can see why there is a lot of hype around this technology, as it may just save the world. Again, your support means the world to us. If you've made it this far, please give us a like to help us out with the algorithm, and subscribe. Also, check out our store for eco-friendly t-shirts and products. For every product we sell, we plant 3 trees and donate 30% of our annual profits to non-profit environmental organisations. So that's at ecolorltd.co.uk. Thank you for your support.